Cool. So how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing.
What does your hoodie say?
Oh,
It says at cause. Aha.
at Cause Law Office. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's us here.
Not enough law offices make hoodies.
Yeah, we got a grip of them. That's what our employees wear them all the time.
Excellent.
Walking around with it. Yeah. Yeah. Our office is freezing. It's like hot as heck out, but they pump the air conditioning here in Florida. So thanks for meeting today. We were introduced by a little bit of marketing and talk on Facebook.
Wherein my sales nerdiness came to bear.
Well, I love sales nerdiness.
Excellent.
I totally love it. Yeah, and you had like this long explanation on something. I was like, oh shit, I love her.
The terms are really important over in the tech sales world where I come from, because you see, when you get bought by private equity, you have to deliver them all these metrics that you say you'll hit. So you want to make them as granular as possible, so that even if you miss some of the ones that really matter, like the amount of revenue you were supposed to bring in, you can point to all the other ones you hit that are more downstream, like, but we got a lot of marketing qualified leads in, MQLs looking great. So.
Yeah. So what do you do? So what are you doing in the legal field right now?
Right now, so I'm kind of an odd bird. I am running my company, the 7 Seedlings, and we've been around, I think, since 2021. So it's been a few years, and we've kind of always been a silent, invisible back office to other professional service operations, so mainly consulting and law. And in part, one of the things we do is support my husband's law office. He does nonprofit and political law here in California. But we're expanding now just a little bit to take on some extra clients. So we have some clients in family law and entertainment law, and we're not one of those companies that's aspiring to be huge. I don't think you'll have me on your podcast in a year and I'll be saying we're at 10 million and we have 100 employees. In a year, success looks like we have 10 firms that we've supported, and they're able to have a nice lifestyle, good work-life balance. They're happy. They don't have to go back to big law or wherever they came from.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do? What is the 7 Seedlings exactly?
We kind of do, so the short answer is we do marketing and back office and paralegal tasks. So kind of everything else that would go with a law firm for the most part. We do, for example, books for some of our clients. We do time entries, but we also do marketing. So we can do it from the very beginning. We have a client right now who's just going to launch. So she hasn't left her firm yet, but when she does, she'll have a family law firm. And we're taking her through from soup to nuts, her brand, her story, her website, where she's going to market, how she'll get clients directly, how she'll get them through referrals. And we hope to be with her for several years, helping her grow. Maybe she'll outgrow us. If she gets to a point where she has, I think, around 10 employees, then she'll have outgrown us. Or maybe she won't. Maybe she'll be happy being smaller. My husband has stayed small intentionally. So it's sort of a mix of everything. But because we specialize in the really small firms and the solos, we're able to kind of reduce the number of vendors they need to be competitive.
Yeah. So you're doing the work of how many, I guess, employees for them?
I think that depending on the type of firm, there might be a paralegal who might be doing intake, right? And they might be doing occasional legal research or drafting or something like that. There could be someone else, an assistant or a virtual assistant, who's coming in and doing their books and chasing down, invoices that haven't been paid. And then typically there's also a marketing agency, or maybe it's a marketing VA or something like that. And they're doing the website and they're doing the social posts. So we're taking over those 3 roles. And that's why it only works, if they're smaller, but we take over those 3 roles and bring them in-house. We're a team we have 3 full-timers, and then we have some part-timers and contractors we bring in, including a lawyer in the Philippines who we helped put through law school. She started with us when she was still in law school, in 2021, and she got barred, I think, last year. So she helps us out as well.
Cool. So you're wanting to stay small yourself? Yeah.
Small. Yep.
Okay. Ideal amount of clients for you would be like 10. Is that what you're saying?
I think It depends on, we have 10 clients now, but we're not doing everything for all of them. Some of them are solo consultants, so we're just coming in as needed if they need some help with graphic design, or, they need help following up on prospects after a convention. But I think success for us looks like 10 monthly retainer clients, where we are kind of like with my husband's firm and a couple of the others, more involved and taking over those 3 roles.
Yeah. It's a good service. I was looking at your website. It looks like you got your hands in a whole bunch of stuff.
That's what happens when you come. I mean, I was a cookie convention producer 10 years ago. I was in tech sales 5 years ago. And, but my first job, I don't want to say out of high school, but the summer after my senior year of high school, and then a little bit into my freshman year, I worked for a law firm. So in a way, I'm coming back full circle. My husband's had his firm. He started in 2017 and I helped him launch it. That's probably the origin story or the genesis of 7 Seedlings. I just didn't know it then.
Yeah, I could see that. So what was your job coming out of high school? You were doing what?
So I'm from Burbank, California, which is best known for having all the studios and the Disney stars, and a local family law firm, 1 attorney, 1 paralegal, and then 1 legal assistant at any given time, was hiring for, I guess, a legal assistant. I applied to this on Craigslist. I don't remember. And I walked in and said, I type really quickly and I can read, and I'm going to USC and I'm just looking for something part-time, and they said, okay. And then bam, I was doing bankruptcy and family law legal assistant work. So I think I said in the group that we met in the other day, I kind of said, I don't know what they were thinking actually, but it worked out great. He actually called me about 5 years later asking me to come back. At this point, I was well into, what was I doing? I was just coming out of doing the cookie convention, and I was also doing marketing. And so I referred him to who's now my business partner, Eric, who was still in college. And I said, my friend Eric could do this for you. So I sent in a proxy essentially to try to help the office. We did not realize then that he was unfortunately in the early stages of dementia. So it was really confusing for me to hear how the office was going compared to how it had been when I was there. I didn't understand why it was falling apart. So that was a journey, but in a way, that's my business partner Eric's origin story too.
So that's how he got started into it.
Yeah, he always wanted. His grandfather's an attorney, or was an attorney before he passed. So he always wanted to be an attorney as well. Sometimes I think I knocked him off that course. But we're both law readers. I don't know if you've ever heard of California's law reader program.
No, I looked at it briefly because you had mentioned it. What is it exactly?
It's best known for being the way Kim Kardashian plans to become an attorney. But California is one of a handful of states that lets you read the law. So you can be supervised by an attorney or a judge for 4 years. You do a certain amount of reading every week. You do have to take monthly exams, but the curriculum isn't set. So you're a supervising attorney decides what exams you're taking. You take the baby bar, as they call it, or the first year law students examination after the first year, and then you can challenge the regular bar after 4. So it's a non-traditional path. It only produces, 5, 10, I think. I looked it up once, attorneys a year, compared to the thousands who come from more traditional backgrounds.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Sounds more approachable.
Yeah, it is. And, I didn't go to traditional law school, so I don't know, but I was, your kind of stereotypical high achiever in high school. And it's, imagine that you can only benchmark yourself against one other person, and the curve doesn't exist because there's only 2 points on it. But you're doing all the same reading you did. So we're in contracts right now, for example, and you're trying to figure it out, but you don't have as much support nor as much competition. And you also don't have the pressure of the grades because no one's going to look at your GPA. It's really just a pass fail. Did you make it through the bar or not?
Yeah. I like that. California's the only state that offers it?
California, Vermont, I want to say, Virginia, and Washington. And then I thought I read somewhere, I think the Dakotas are working on introducing something like it. So there's some states working on expanding access to becoming a lawyer through a non-traditional path. It's really designed for paralegals, full time. But I recently spoke to a law reader, I think he was here in California, and his mom was a law reader herself. So he's now a second generation law reader and going to take over the firm.
God, I'd love it if they offered it here in Florida.
You should check into if they're going to. I will say this, not a lot of people pass. It's a lot of the students who try to do this might not have even been to college. Kim Kardashian wasn't, for example. So there's a lot more reasons why you might not be able to complete. You have to be self-motivated. You have to find someone who's willing to stick with you for 4 years. And of course, you have to learn very complex subject matter, mostly on your own.
Right. Yeah, we have a few paralegals in our office who are better than some attorneys.
I bet.
Run into. Yeah. And the amount of experience they have and what they've seen, all the different types of cases, they're just like super, super experienced. And it's a shame.
And they just didn't go for whatever reason.
Right.
They didn't have so I had my daughter when I was 20. I always have to pause and count. 23, right around the time I would have gone to law school. And it just wasn't possible for me. I know there's many moms who make it through law school, and much respect to them. The amount of debt I had coming from a private college and the situation I was in, it wasn't a possibility for me. And that's okay. I enjoy what I did after. I'm not going through this because there was anything wrong with I might go back to tech sales. Maybe I'll be in legal tech or something like that in the future. But it's partially that my husband's firm is successful, and it would be nice to be able to provide him some support. He supported me, and I want him to be able to take a vacation and things like that. And partially because I always meant to do it. And now that my daughter's 11, there's time and there's space to actually take on an extra 18 hours, I think it is, a week.
18 hours is what you're doing now for the readers program.
18 hours is what's required of reading. Yes.
Yeah. Like our paralegals, they have kids. They're working full time for us and then go home to their kids. And taking time off to go to law school is just like not realistic.
Right. And the older you get, the less you get the ROI. It's not just the cost of going to law school, which is obviously a lot, but it's also the opportunity cost of dropping out of your career in what, for example, for me would be my prime earning years, and just saying, never mind, to 3 or 4 years. It's, it wouldn't be very practical. I don't want to call it unconscionable, but I would feel terrible. So
for sure.
I will say I'll check after we get off this call and see what they're doing in Florida. So Eric and I, since we're law readers, after we're done, or even along the way, we plan to build a program that law firms can implement. There's some that exist. There are curriculums you can buy for this, but there's not a lot of support or scaffolding around it. And we want other firms to be able to do this for their paralegals, their assistants, etc.
Yeah. Did your husband open his own firm right out of law school?
No. He went to what's now called UC Law at San Francisco, but used to be called Hastings in San Francisco. And he, after law school, went to work for, I think, a labor law firm. He's also in politics, so there were some times he was on campaigns, etc. When I met him in 2016, he was working for a political law firm. And then in 2017 is when he decided to go out on his own. Along the way, he was general counsel for a presidential campaign in the 2020 cycle, for example, but he was able to run his firm while doing that. So in terms of opportunity costs, running his own firm has allowed him to do these other things that if he were at a traditional firm, the billable hours requirements and the, what do you call it, stodginess? Is that fair?
Sure.
Of law firm partners wouldn't allow him to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When did you guys get together?
So in 2016, in the spring, I was going through a divorce. I got married young, had my daughter young, so don't super recommend it, but it turned out okay. And a high school friend of mine called me and said, hey, I know that things are changing for you. I want you to come play dodgeball. And I did martial arts in high school. I'm reasonably athletic, but I don't like playing sports with it's going to sound funny, with balls involved, because I'm always worried I'll get hit in the face. So I didn't play softball. I played soccer in high school for one season, and I was fast, so I'd get to the ball first, and then I'd just look at it like, wait, am I supposed to do something? So I just guard it till a better player showed up. And she said, you'll meet people. There's people our age here. I was in my mid-20s, come down. So I did. And on my second night playing, I got hit in the head.
Of course.
And I was like, ow. And I looked and like, who hit the new girl? And I'm super short. You can't necessarily tell here. I'm super short. Like, who hit the new short girl who's not a threat? And this guy was raising his hand like, I'm sorry. And that was my husband. I said, oh, my standing desk is on its way up. My husband was aiming at a tall guy in front of me and he moved. So I got hit. And after that, we hit it off and we've been, together ever since. So that's I don't know how we would have crossed paths otherwise, but he was a young attorney. I actually told him that first night, I said, I'm thinking of going to law school. I'm selling my convention. I don't know what I'm going to do next. And he said, don't go. You lawyers love to tell people not to go to law school. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, they do. They do. I'm not an attorney.
Oh, you're not? Do you tell people not to go to law school?
My wife does.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she said it to a couple of people in our office just because it's just like so terrible. I think it does
sound pretty bad.
Yeah, it's just like a traumatic experience.
That would be the word. I mean, I'm experiencing a very small, very low stakes version of that when I did my first. And I have some legal writing experience. I've been a paralegal, like we were saying. I've also been in a lot of levels of family and family-like courts. So I've done a lot of drafting. I help people out with this as a domestic violence support person on a volunteer basis. And I still think I almost had a panic attack on my first exam. I was given a fact pattern and I had like 10 cases. What am I supposed to put on this paper in 1 hour?
Right.
So yeah, and I didn't, and it was the right move. I ended up in a field of SaaS that's kind of niche. So we dealt in personality and cognitive assessments for job applicants. And then I moved from there to a company that had a more holistic view where you're applying those over the whole life cycle. So to improve leadership and employee engagement and your processes and how you treat people and whether they want to work there or not. So that was a really fun adventure. And I still use that. And I still do consulting as part of 7 Seedlings. I helped a law firm rewrite their job ad the other day. They had 0 applicants for a month. Yeah. And then she had 7 that week. 5 were qualified. She was hoping to just make 1 hire and she was able to hire 2.
That's happened before for us.
Has it?
It's like, well, we get a flood of applicants. I just put an ad out today for another legal assistant. And the beginning of our ad, what does it say? This always hooks people in. The non-stuffy attorneys want to add more non-stuffiness to the team, and we're hoping you might be it. That right there just like draws people in.
Yes. That's fantastic. Yeah. That's what a lot of the ads don't have, as I'm sure you've seen, is they're just very dry. And some fields of law are dry, but that doesn't mean the people you work with need to be.
Right. Yeah, and that's what we discovered with the whole non-stuffy attorney brand was the way I came up with it. We were looking for a tagline, and I have some marketing experience. So I wanted to see what the public wanted. Right. Like, what did they like and dislike about attorneys? And I planned to do in-person surveys. But then COVID hit.
Right.
It was May of 2020. So I just had the bright idea to look at Google reviews. And so I looked and did a survey on them about probably at least 1,000 reviews. 5-star and 1-star reviews is what I would read. And I would just keep tally marks on what was recurring, what people said recurring. And it was 3 things. One was that they were competent, knowledgeable, right? All that. The next was that they communicated, that they returned communication quickly. They answered the phone. Apparently that's a pretty big thing. Attorneys don't answer the phone, or they don't have phone, or and they take a while to get back to people. And then the last one was that the attorney was down to earth. They were just like them.
So
they were relatable. They were just like me. I didn't feel like They weren't condescending, right? Those were all the 5-star, and the 1-star were the opposite. So, yeah, I remember my wife was in the bath, and I was out in the living room, and I was like, I went in there and said, "Hey, what do you think about non-stuffy attorneys?" And she's like, "I love it." And from there, like, the whole concept was kind of born. And as the years have gone by, I've come to realize that most attorneys have this the public has a preconceived notion on attorneys that they are stuffy, that they are very serious and very conservative and all this. And what I've discovered, though, is that most of them are not. Most of them are very down to earth and relatable and just like everybody else. The problem for them is, though, the potential client doesn't know that until they sit in front of them.
Right. Until they get to the consultation or to the appointment.
Exactly. So for us, since we put it on all of our marketing materials, the public gets that viewpoint before they even meet. Right. Yeah. And it has brought us in. We get so many calls because we're the non-stuffy attorneys.
Right.
Yeah. It's been amazing. Yeah. Our goal is to make that a nationwide brand, license it out to attorneys so they can use the tagline in their own materials and, call themselves a non.
You can join 1% for the planet, right? You could say you're a B Corp. You could say you're non-stuffy attorneys. It signals something. My husband, he recently wanted to redo his site, so we did, and he made the choice not to wear a suit on the site. He wears a sweater.
Good choice.
Right?
Good choice.
A sweater, and some lawyers that would horrify them, but he said, I work with nonprofits, and politicians, but this isn't corporate litigation. We're not, I have family law attorney friends who still have to wear, pantyhose to court. Yeah. And maybe that's a little different, but he doesn't litigate. So why, and he, runs a mostly virtual law office. So why would he? So I think that's maybe next iteration, I'll get him to wear a hoodie.
Yeah, I guess it depends, I guess, on your practice area, right? For us, when I surveyed when I looked at those reviews, I was looking at business law, business attorneys, because that's what we practiced when we first started. Mm-hmm. And we were getting into a little bit of estate planning at the time. And so I looked at both of those, and that was the overwhelming. Maybe in criminal defense, it's the public wants someone different, right? They want someone who's tough, or maybe, I don't know. I didn't review that, but you kind of have to, and that's where surveys are super important for marketing, because, you can guess what the public wants. But if you're off, then your whole marketing is all screwed up.
That reminds me of in tech, we often put out these research reports or white papers. It's a lot like what you're describing, where either you'll have, 5,000 HR professionals or 5,000 CEOs weigh in on what's on their mind. But you can also do things like what you basically were doing and comb reviews and see what people are talking about. And I think those are incredibly helpful. So I do think I could see how in criminal law, for example, like you were saying, you might want someone who's a little more buttoned up because it's a terrible time and you're looking for someone who is, absolutely going to project authority. On the other hand,
but maybe not.
I don't know.
You don't know until you actually do the survey, right?
Right.
And get, okay, what is the broad mass? What do they want?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And who do you want? Which clients do you want? I mean, do you want the clients who want the stuffy attorney, or is your market different? Are they younger? Are they, from different backgrounds?
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely a two-way street. But it's been fun. It's been fun, a lot of fun.
Good.
Yeah. So your husband plans on staying in that practice area for?
Yes. I think it allows him to work with the causes and the people he cares about. It's where he's, been since and it's where he has a lot of connections because he didn't go to law school right after undergrad. So he's a little unusual in that way. He took 2 years off to Teach for America. So he taught in a, underserved school in the Mississippi Delta for a couple years. So
Wow.
he's, a different perspective on I guess what life is than maybe someone who's went straight out of law school. So
Mhm.
I think it's been a great fit for him. He's done some appeals, especially on a pro bono basis. So he's done other work as well. And I think that's an open question for me is, other than helping with his firm, what would my practice area be? Or will I even be a full-time attorney? I don't know. I love what I do now. And I have a deep background in tech and tech sales. So it's not a given to me that I would just be a full-time practicing attorney. I keep hearing about these non-practicing sales attorneys.
Yeah. If you want a job, let me know.
Well, rainmaking is, if I were smarter, Joe, I think I'd stick with sales. I think that's just the honest truth.
If you want to make money. Yeah. If you want to make money.
What I do well, but complexity doesn't come along as often in the sales world. And when it does, they try to give it to someone else. So yes, I might get a complex situation, but they're not going to let me solve it. They're going to give it to a product manager or someone else.
What do you mean by that? I'm not sure if I understand complexity.
Yeah, so I like complex things. I like to pick through things. I like trying to wrap my head around something that I don't understand yet and figure it out. And in sales, you do that with people. So that part I love, and helping people and figuring out their problem and matching a solution or building a solution for them. But the really complex things like that might come across in litigation or might come across in an unusual type of nonprofit wants to start up and it's going to help. We have one situation, a friend of mine has a nonprofit. She's going to build a collection of tiny homes and communal homes on her own property for children in treatment at the local children's hospital for them to be able to stay with their parents, for example, so that they don't have to stay in hotels. They don't have to stay in Airbnbs. They don't have to be separated from siblings and pets. But that's not a really straightforward application for tax exemption because it involves, improvements theoretically to an existing privately held property. So those are the kinds of things in sales you just don't get to figure out. And those are the kinds of things by being an attorney, I hope I get to work on.
Got it. So if you were an attorney, you would be able to work on that. So would it be ideal then for you to be an attorney and doing sales as an attorney?
Well, I think if you're a solo or you're in a small firm, that's just part of it, right? I can't think of a lot of firms in which the attorney doesn't need to do some sales. And when I was looking for a family law attorney, for example, it turned out to be a great firm, but I remember I did the consultation and at the end, the attorney looked at me and she was maybe 3 years out of law school. And she goes, "Are you going to retain?" Just point blank. And I was, what? How do we get from my situation to, are you retaining? It was very sudden. And I just laughed because I had formal sales training and I thought, well, that was a bit much, but my understanding is lawyers don't learn how to have those types of conversations. Right. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God. When we first started, I was working a sales job where I really learned what sales was. That's really what I learned. And then I left there and started working with my wife, and it was just her and I. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing like all these out points that she's in her sales, right? Oh, during the consults, and I'm just like, so I'm like trying to correct her on it, and we're doing like sales drilling. And one day I remember she was just like, "I don't want to be a salesperson. This is not what I signed up for. I want to be an attorney." I said, "Okay, well, if that's what you want to do, then you should go join a law firm and not have your own practice, right? Because you have to be a salesperson first." Right. We ended up my sales coach at that company. We ended up hiring her for some sessions, and she really helped Ashley out a lot because being her husband, and I'm a little type A, and I can be a little abrasive. And so yeah, we needed somebody else to tag in on it. But yeah, since then she's been great. But we're in the process right now of totally separating sales and the production team and having like a proper just sales team. That's all that they do. And then, attorneys and paralegals and legal assistants are doing the production work. And so we're in that process right now.
I know there's some nuances here with local bar rules. So what works in Florida might not necessarily work in California. But if I'm being honest, I think that makes perfect sense. The lawyers should be doing legal work unless they want to do the sales. And what predicts success, so who will be a really good attorney for you, is totally different than what predicts who will give you a great consultation and a great intake process. It's just not the same thing. And in my line of work in tech, we did a lot about personality matching to roles, and what predicts how well you'll make it through law school is not necessarily the same as being from a sales background.
They're like two totally separate things.
Totally. Yes. I mean, they can coincide, but often then we end up with the attorneys who maybe went to law school because it was a safe career path and didn't actually love the legal work itself. And they actually do prefer, you hear about those partners at firms, they don't do much of the work. They just make the connections and they do the networking and they bring in the business, and that's their role.
Yeah. We just hired an attorney to fill one of these positions as a sales role. And I remember I put the ad out and we got a decent amount of applicants, and 3/4 of them, I'd be like, hey, this is a sales position. This is like, you're not doing legal work.
Right.
And they were just like,
oh dear.
I know. It was like, but then we found this one woman, and I said that to her and she goes, she was like, sign me up.
Excellent.
And I was like, perfect. Okay, good.
Yes.
That's the attitude I need for this job. Most law firms, smaller law firms at least, don't have something like this set up that we're working on. There's a few that I've talked to that do, but there's not many of them.
It's hard. I mean, because, great sales talent is typically not going to be working at your firm for what a small firm would pay a legal assistant or a paralegal. So it is hard to fill that role. And I don't know if you found answers for these really small firms, but we help some of our clients with some intake, things like that. Obviously, we can't do the consultation, but at least with the early qualifying. So seeing if does the service they want actually match the service we have. Being a nonprofit law firm, for example, you get a lot of people who think you are a pro bono attorney, and you need to make sure, they understand you serve nonprofits. You are not a nonprofit. That's a really fun one. And it was really fun in Google AdWords to figure out how to control for that. It took years, if I'm being honest, to make sure that the clicks were genuinely clients and not. And it also it feels horrible to tell someone who's desperately looking for a pro bono attorney that you're not it.
Have you gotten that? Have you gotten that dialed in?
Yes, it rarely happens now.
Okay.
But my husband doesn't advertise right now, so that could be part of it. He shut off his advertising. I can't remember how long ago, maybe a year ago or so, because he just was happy with where the firm was at that moment. I'm sure he'll turn it back on at some point, but he hasn't needed to.
Yeah, we do a lot of Medicaid applications and getting people qualified for Medicaid, but it's for long-term care.
Right.
So they're above the asset limit or whatever income limit, and so there's legal instruments we can use to get them approved. So we run a lot of Google ads on that. We get tons of calls for people looking just for Medicaid insurance to pay their prescriptions the problem we have, we've run like very specific ads for like qualified income trust, which is one of the instruments that you would use, right? Personal services contract, and the search traffic just isn't really there,
right?
So you don't get much. So the Medicaid ads that we're running, even though they go to a very specific landing page, which is very direct on what we do and what we don't do, we still get tons of those calls. But it's by far producing the best ROI for us. So we just recently hired Smith AI. You familiar with them?
No.
Yeah, it's a virtual receptionist, basically.
Okay.
Not AI. They do have AI receptionists, but it's a virtual team. They literally started today, and so it's been chaos here today because we're like debugging.
Yes.
Shit. Yeah, it's been a nut house here today. But we hired them so that they could basically filter those calls and not send it to our intake team that's here. And they just clog up the line,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the more time you spend talking to those, the less time you can give to someone who's actually looking for the service you provide, who you can actually provide great service to. So I totally get it. And in the tech world, we have in a lot of sales organizations, there's a sales or business development representative, and they're the first person who speaks to that inquiry to make sure that everything matches. They could maybe need the service or the software solution or whatever it is. And then they pass it to the account executive. And that would be, the type of role I had, for example, where now I'm taking them through what the solution is and what they need. But in the legal world, if you're getting a super high volume, I know this is also a thing for personal injury. For example, you get a super high volume of people who need help right away. That immediacy, or what do you call it? Speed to lead, is really important.
Yeah. I have so much focus on speed to lead. Like, it drives when I see a lead that hasn't been like an online lead that hasn't been called back within like 10 minutes. It just drives me nuts.
It's hard. And do you serve clients? Are they all in Florida? In other words, all in your time zone? That helps. That helps. In some settings where they're all over, it can cause a lot of chaos because you're trying to serve all the time zones and it's not super compatible for most teams. So I can see where an AI driven solution makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah. So you were an account executive. Basically, you're doing were you closing too? Closing sales?
Absolutely. So I had a few different account executive roles at different times, but the common thread would be that it involved taking someone who was typically they'd be looking for a way to improve their hit rate in hiring, how many of those hires were successful, or to reduce, and I guess related to that, reduce the amount of time it takes to fill a role and how much time and effort it takes to take someone through the candidacy process. So we would take them from there to showing them what, in the case of my roles, which assessments or assessment-based solutions might help them identify who in the pile of candidates is most likely to enjoy a role with a lot of talking or not a lot of talking at all. If it's software engineering, for example, who is most likely to fill the needs of this leadership team if this team is working on dialing in process after years of being a startup and just building it while flying, and taking them from there through contract signing. And for a small firm, and I worked with lots of small companies, including small law firms, that's pretty easy. You're just talking to a founder or, an owner like you, and they're deciding. But in larger companies, and I worked with a lot of larger companies as big as, the Apples of the world, there's a lot of stakeholders, there's a lot of considerations, there are timelines, there might be, in the case of healthcare, grant funds involved, regulation. So it takes a lot to make it through that type of process, including working with lawyers and procurement. So that's where some of my legal experience comes from. I get quasi-legal experience is being one of the few account executives who was conversant enough in legal lingo to take a contract through the first rounds of edits without needing the legal team, because that backs everything up.
Mm-hmm. How'd you get into that role? How'd you get that job? Executive? Yeah, how'd you get that job?
So when I was selling the cookie convention, I was like 5 years out of college. I was still super young, and I'd worked in entertainment, because when you live in Burbank, you think you want to be part of the entertainment industry. Turns out I didn't. I realized I didn't. So then I went into luxury medical marketing, and I was doing well there, but I wanted to run this cookie convention. I was absolutely determined to run sort of like a Comic-Con for sweets lovers. So we did that for a couple of years, hugely successful. The fire department had to come manage the lines. But if I'm being honest, my co-founder was my ex-husband, and that was not sustainable. Yeah. So I sold my half to him and, let him continue on with it. And I asked my sister, who's a recruiter, I said, what am I qualified to do? What I have a degree in political science. I have not worked in that field. What am I going to do? And she said, with what you know how to do, you can do marketing and be happier, or you can do sales and you can make more money. So as a single mom, that was an obvious one. Living in Los Angeles with Los Angeles rents, living with my parents wasn't an option for various reasons. So I absolutely had to do sales. So she had a friend whose best friend's husband was working at Criteria Corp, which is a software solution with assessments built in West Hollywood. And they referred me for an interview there. And my VP there, Amira, said, I would have thrown your resume away into the digital trash pile if not for your assessment results, because I had to take assessments in order to get there. And they were able to see the level of problem solving and learning ability and speed I had, and that I was naturally extroverted, naturally assertive, naturally low in patience, which is helpful in sales because you don't want to wait too long to get that close. And when they saw that was a fit, they brought me in for the interview. And that's how I found my first account executive role. And it was great. I'm still in touch with them today. The CEO was officiating a wedding I was attending last year.
So did you work with them for a while, or did you go into a different sales job? Or
I was at Criteria for almost 2 years. And so this was back in 2018. So from 2016 to 2018, I was at Criteria, and remote work was still exotic then. You might have heard Los Angeles traffic is pretty bad. But
I've heard a thing or two. Yeah.
You heard a thing or two. Spoiler, it's really bad. And my daughter was, 3 when I started there. She was 5 when I left. And I was having a lot of trouble making it to her events and what she needed and her appointments, and commuting 45 minutes, an hour to the office. Her school was 20 minutes. It was like I was driving a very large triangle. Every day. So I asked for remote work privileges, and they were really hesitant. Criteria, didn't really want to do it. And so we had a competitor in Boston called the Predictive Index, who I admired a lot because they did work across the whole employee life cycle. And at that time, Criteria only did pre-employment, so hiring decision. Now they do the whole employee life cycle as well, but back then they were focused on pre-employment. So, but they weren't hiring remotely, the company in Boston. So I cold called, or I LinkedIn messaged the CEO of the company to ask if he'd consider me. I said, hey, I'm a top performer at Criteria. Do you want to talk? And that was how I was able to be a fully remote account executive for.
So he replied to you?
He did reply to me. And in a funny turn of events, he had to sell me down the chain. So instead of starting with the sort of the lowest level supervisor and working up, I started with the CEO, then interviewed with the chief human resources officer, then with the VP of sales, and then with who would be my sales director, who had never managed a remote employee before, and making it through those layers. I was hired before I met them in person. And in 2018, that was odd.
Yeah. That is definitely an odd way to go. But
it was an odd way to go.
But that's like a salesperson though. That's what you're going to do. You're going to get to the.
I knew my resume would not make it through the system because I didn't live nearby and I wasn't going to relocate. So there was only one other option, and he wasn't the only one at the company I messaged, but he's the one who replied.
Yeah.
So that's how I made it to that company, and that's where we also worked with some big law firms as well. So I was exposed to the range of challenges a law firm might face with their personnel.
Mm-hmm. What kind of training did you have?
Let's see. So each company, as is typical, would have a training sequence they took you through, both on their product and on sales. So the way they like to do sales. So I received training at both companies. But while at Criteria, they also had someone come in, a special trainer who specialized in how to give software demos. And that training wasn't well received by everyone because the trainer was he stuck his foot in his mouth a lot, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But I got a lot out of it. It changed the way I demoed, and that became my specialty. So after a while, I moved out of being an account executive, and I was more of a solutions architect or a solutions engineer running the sales, the presentation of the product for larger companies and bigger prospects. But I didn't really have any formal training other than that. When I was in high school and college, I worked at a martial arts school. I learned to sell memberships. It's pretty hard to sell a 1-year membership contract for a 3-year-old, but I managed to do that. So, and then doing the cookie convention, I had to sell booths, sponsorships, and tickets. So both B2B and B2C selling. And I did that soup to nuts. So I had a background, but nothing specific to what I was selling when I entered tech.
Got it. How about like on your own? Did you do training, read books, attend seminars, do any of that stuff?
Certainly. I have a bookshelf behind me with one of the early books I read that I actually do recommend to attorneys. It's probably a little dated now, but it's still great. It's called Selling the Invisible. And it was all about selling and positioning services, things you can't see. And, in a lot of ways, what lawyers do is that. I mean, I don't know about you. Most lawyers don't even offer you a work sample when you interview them. And most consumers have no idea how to tell who's good or not. In fact, most lawyers can't even tell who's good or not in a different practice area. How are you supposed to know? So Selling the Invisible was super helpful. There were others. The sales director who agreed to hire me and manage me remotely, Ted Olson, released a book called Feel Good About Selling. And that's one I recommend to attorneys or non-attorney sales staff who maybe don't feel great about selling, like your wife. And it walks through how to do ethical selling and what selling really is if you're doing it well. It's not car salesman-y or
right.
It's not supposed to be pushy. If anything, you're supposed to make sure they always know they have the freedom to walk away from the conversation.
Yeah. That's a big thing. That's another preconceived notion on sales is that it's pushy, it's car salesman-ishy, where a good salesperson is getting the person to have the cognition that this is what they need, right? And that they should get it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What would you say to attorneys? Like what sales tips would you give?
I think that a lot of attorneys do their consultations and they have a set of questions they ask to understand the legal situation, which is important, but they don't do a lot about understanding the motivations and needs of the person telling them about it. So my first tip would be to ask open-ended questions and listen and ask follow-up questions based on those. So you need both a script and the courage to go beyond the script, but you should always be moving them through a guided conversation because they're looking to you as the expert, not just on drafting their legal paperwork, but on the process and on what they need. So if you don't know what the next step is, or you're not confident in saying at the end, based on all of this, is there anything else you want to ask about what it would be like to retain us and work with us as your firm? Is there anything that concerns you? Is there anything standing in the way of us moving forward? Should I send you a retainer? Or are you still doing research? Where are you in this process of your own? If you don't have the courage to do that, they're going to be confused too. And they're going to retain with the firm that makes them feel like they're going to get firm, confident guidance.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with that more, for sure. We were just talking about that recently, with a guy who's like, we were talking about seminars, but then we kind of related it to consults and the sales process, but because they're kind of similar, right? A lot of the seminars are meant to be sales, especially estate planning, right?
Sure.
And he's like, there's 3 different ways to go. One's educational, right? You're educating. The other is you're entertaining. Right? You're entertaining, or you're selling.
Right.
And so it's like one of those 3 things. And attorneys, he was saying, this is a guy up in Georgia who's got a big law firm. And it's like most attorneys want to educate.
Right.
Yeah, rather than really sell. And when you don't get into the underlying issues on what they're there for, right, then you're really missing the mark. Right. Yeah, maybe you're educating, but are you, without them voicing to you, okay, this is really why I need this, and this is what it's gonna, these are the problems it's gonna solve, right? You can't really convince them that you're going to be able to solve them if that's not part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't know what the problem really is, And in some fields of law, some practice areas, it would be a lot more obvious than others, right? But
Yeah, keep my
that's
ass out
kind
of
of how it
jail.
goes. Actually, that reminds me of a book. I don't know if you've ever heard of The Challenger Sales. That was hugely influential. So it was research based, and it looked at, like you were saying, the different sales styles. And there was the teacher, there was the relationship based seller, there was the lone wolf, I think it was, if I recall. But the most effective type of seller was the challenger, the one who was educating, but insofar as they were reframing for the client what they needed and helping guide them towards what they should be considering, and not just what they were considering in that moment. So that it's education, but it's challenging. And I think that's a good, whether you're just listening to the highlights or reading the highlights or reading the whole book, that's where some attorneys, especially those in litigation, might find it really helpful to see how to apply those skills they've learned.
Yeah. I'm working on our sales script right now because we have a non-attorney salesperson starting on Tuesday.
Are you going to send it to me? I want to see.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll definitely send it to you for sure. But I think it's kind of incorporating what you were just saying, right? Like educating, but then asking the questions that kind of elicit the responses that you want.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's like, okay, what was the woman's name? She was on life support for like, oh God, I always forget her name. It was here locally, but it was big national news a long time ago. She was young. She had a stroke or a car accident, something like that. But anyway, she had a husband, and she went into went on a life support, and she was basically a vegetable, like no real brain activity. Husband said to pull the plug. Parents, very religious, said not to. Right, that's not right. And this battle went on for 15 years, and she was.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. And so she was in on life support for 15 years. And so there's a document, a living will, where you outline like right? Are you okay with this or not? But she didn't have that. So turned into this huge court battle. So yeah, stuff like that, like explaining that, educating on that story. It's like, okay, if you were incapacitated, would you want the decision to be yours, or do you want to leave it up for others to have to try and figure out?
Right.
Asking stuff, kind of. Yeah. So that's kind of what.
That's a rough one. I was listening to, I can't remember which episode of your podcast, but similarly, you had an estate planning attorney on, and they said that in the time it took one of their prospects to price shop, they passed away. And they had an appointment, I can't remember who it was, the next day. And that stuck. Those types of stories, what do we remember? We remember stories, right? That's how we're wired to remember the world. Some of my favorite questions for attorneys that I recommend they ask are actually just, do you have a recent example? If someone says they're having a problem in their company, oh, these people, don't follow our OSHA safety rules, and then we get a workers' comp claim. Okay, do you have a recent example? So getting them to give you the real
I love that.
situations. Yeah.
And it makes it more real to them. It's not like this kind of nebulous thing that they explain the exact situation. It becomes more, I guess, solid in their mind.
Absolutely. And in yours, so you can see how they really handled it. You can also ask, what have you already tried? So, who have you already hired to help you with this? Are they switching firms? And if so, why? If you're providing fractional general counsel services, for example, knowing whether they had someone in-house or they had a patchwork of attorneys, or how they were handling that before, can help you understand how to win their business now.
Yeah. God, I love sales.
Me too.
There's a book I read, by Grant Cardone. It was Sell or Be Sold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've heard of it.
Oh, amazing. That really helped Ashley out with sales, because he kind of starts off the book basically saying, if you're not good at sales, you're not going to be good at life.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, because you're not going to get what you want. You're not going to get what you want out of life. Right. Just a simple example of you want to go to a particular restaurant, and your husband doesn't. Okay. He wants to go somewhere else. Okay. Are you going to go to this other restaurant, or are you going to sell his ass and convince him to go to the one that you want to go to?
Sure.
And even your kids, right? Right. Getting them to agree with what, they should be doing or what you think they should be doing. It's all selling.
Yeah.
Right? Selling and
Also,
closing.
the one thing along what you were saying that attorneys, I think, do take away, or they can remember from their mediation training and ADR training in law school, is positions versus interests, right? Like with your kids, if they really, really want mac and cheese and you've had it 4 nights in a row and you don't want it, figuring out why do they want mac and cheese? Is it actually just they don't want to eat what you are proposing, and it could be something other than mac and cheese, right? So positions versus interests, I think, is another one that's helpful for attorneys if you just kind of remind them that they did learn about this at one point, assuming they ever took a mediation or alternative dispute resolution training.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that. So your daughter's 11?
She's 11, and she's got a lot of the traits of a future lawyer, although I wouldn't say I hope that she does that. She enjoys a good debate. She actually enjoys looking up the research behind things to the extent an 11-year-old might. But other than that, she's your average, she's your normal 11-year-old. She loves soccer. She loves ponies, horses, stuffed animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a 13-year-old daughter.
Oh.
She looks like she's 17, 18.
Okay.
She acts like it too.
All right.
I know.
8th grade or?
Yeah, 8th grade.
Yeah, 8th grade.
Yeah. Very into volleyball.
Okay.
She just got into that. She was a competitive gymnast until she was, I guess, 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went through puberty kind of early, got bigger. She's not big by any means, but she's big for gymnastics. You need to be like tiny for that stuff. Yeah, she's thin, but still too big. And then had a couple injuries. But she is a salesperson.
She is.
Oh my God.
Sounds like they're peas in a pod. Anna also is tall. She developed on the early side.
Oh,
yeah. Isn't it comforting though to know that, they're able to navigate the world maybe a little more easily than
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want her to be super confident and get what she wants.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I would much rather have a kid. And she's had trouble with other kids her age because she hasn't really given in to what the group thinks, so to speak, or what everyone else is doing. Right? She thinks something isn't okay. She'll speak up and say something. It's giving her a little bit of trouble now, but I don't think it will in the future.
Does she know what she wants to? What does she think she wants to do when she grows up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So she, from the age of 5, she's been saying she wants to be a neurosurgeon.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Yeah.
A neurosurgeon. And she would watch YouTube videos when she was 5 years old, YouTube videos of surgeries.
Wow.
I know, like gory ass stuff.
That is, I don't watch those. My daughter actually hates even illustrations of the inside of the body. Even drawings of the heart make her turn away. So no, not a future doctor, but it sounds like you might have one.
Yeah, but she's she kind of changed her tune over the last year. It's been just like, this is what I'm doing. No doubt about it. And then this past year, she's kind of changed it, and she talked about being an attorney for a minute. But right now, I think she's a little bit undecided. I always tell her she should just be in sales, own her own business, or do something in sales. Yeah.
She learns a trade, or being an attorney is a trade, or if she opens her own medical office or whatever she does. I mean, like we were saying, sales is present. Part of it.
Yeah. You're not gonna have a good business unless you can sell.
Right. Or you marry someone who can sell.
Yeah, there you go.
Cheat code, right? Yeah. Anna's she says she wants to cook. She likes cooking, although she's sort of conceded that she can't see herself doing that forever. And who knows? I don't think she has a set path whatsoever. And at that age, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. And then I realized there was blood involved and guts, and I didn't want to do that. I also thought I wanted to be a jockey. And then I realized the rate of injury was pretty high. And I was like, maybe I don't want to be a jockey. So I had no idea. And I didn't even know the things I've done since then, like being an HR consultant. I didn't even know that was a thing you could do. So I don't know how I could have aspired to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've known for a long time from very young, this dog.
I have a golden too.
Do you?
I do. Yes.
This color?
No, she's much lighter. She's very gold. But her dad was that color.
Oh yeah.
Dad was red.
Yeah, we have two of them in here. This is Dash. Dash is a little bit special.
How's Dash special?
He's a little dopey. He's dopey.
He's a golden.
Yeah, he's a golden. We have another one. He's out there. So we have two of them. He's the younger one. He's a little dopey, a little bit scared. He barks at his shadow. The other guy's super confident. Doesn't bark at anything. Yeah.
Here's Luna.
Aw.
Say hi.
Aw.
Luna is also scared
Hi,
of
Luna.
things, including jumping on the bed because she tripped once. And now she hypes herself up to jump on the bed so much that she makes herself trip every single. You know those cartoons of an animal running in place but getting nowhere?
Yeah. Yeah. Aw.
She's very.
How old is she?
She is 4. She was born in 2020, so she's turning 5 this year.
Oh.
Hello. Yes. So
Yeah,
I have an office golden too.
Oh. Yeah, they're the best dogs. The best.
Hard to beat. My other dog's a border collie Aussie mix. My daughter found her on the hill behind our house. And in the time it took us to figure out, she did not have an owner who was going to come for her. She just moved in. So
yeah,
that's her other dog. She's 40% Aussie, 40% border collie, and some blue heeler like Bluey, and then a mutt. And she's, we got her at age 1.5, which we learned from her microchip profile. She had a microchip. Her owners just didn't want her back. Yeah.
It's so terrible.
I know. I think they dumped her. It turned out they were not from anywhere around here, and their dog just appeared, and she was friendly and, had some behavioral issues, but really nothing tremendous. So now Luna has a sister.
Yeah, we were just at a farmer's market, and they had there was like an animal shelter booth there, and they had some dogs, and one was it's like 6 months old, and the people had just left them in the apartment. They left the apartment, vacated the apartment, and just left them in it. I was like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, there's so many dog rescues and there's so many options.
Yeah.
It's just
it's like criminal.
Yeah, it is. It should be. I don't know. So do both your dogs come to the office every day?
Yep. I bring them in here, and then they're with me until about 4, and then our personal assistant takes them, and she goes and walks them for about an hour, and then picks up our daughter, takes her to wherever she needs to go, volleyball usually, and then and so they're here about 9 to 4, 9 to 3 sometimes.
My dogs they chase lights. It's really unfortunate. So they're not allowed to be in this office. Sometimes I had them send her in because we met yours, but we met Dash, but they chase lights.
What does that mean? Chase lights?
So let's say, my watch casts a reflection onto the wall, or here, I'll just show you. Luna's just staring at those lights underneath the desk.
Oh my gosh.
So you can see she's just looking at the ground.
She's like,
what is that?
Oh my God, that is so funny.
There's paw prints on this wall, if you look closely, right there, from them jumping up and hitting a light. I think otherwise they'd be perfect office dogs, but that one quirk is incredibly unfortunate because
both of them do it.
So only the golden did it, and after a year of living here, the other dog, Riley, the border collie mix, started doing it too, and that was incredibly unfortunate because of all the habits to learn. Luna's angelic, basically. Of all the habits to learn from Luna, she didn't learn waiting patiently. She didn't learn how to find a hidden rope in the house when we play Find It. She learned how to chase lights, and that.
Oh my God! when she started doing it, were you like, what the hell? Like,
absolutely. I was like, you are kidding me. And once they see it, it's, and dog behaviorists say it's a sign of boredom and all those things. And maybe that's true, but the reality is they do it all the time, inside, outside. Luna also chases her shadow and her dust. I don't know about yours, mine, she sheds a lot.
Yeah, they shed a lot.
She chases her own little fur balls.
Oh my God.
Around all day. So she's low maintenance. She's quiet about chasing the lights. The problem is Riley whines. So it's worse, actually.
So you got a whiner. Does the golden whine?
Luna barely vocalizes. She learned very young that we wanted her to not vocalize much. And she went so far the other way that we feel bad for her because she barely, if she's hungry, she'll look at you and go, "Rrr, rrr, rrr." And that's it. That's it. Yeah. Or if she wants to go outside, she sits at the back door, very straight back. And then if you don't notice her, she'll go, but that's it.
Yeah. That's our first one, the other one that's not in the office, that's in the other room. His name is Nouse. And he I got him when he was a puppy. It was right before we were moving from California to Florida. And I really didn't work from like February until June. I was doing a little bit, but not much. Mm-hmm. And I just trained the hell out of this dog.
Yeah.
And he doesn't make a sound. Yeah, if he does, right, it's like him and Dash playing or something. But same thing. And so COVID hit and we started looking for another dog. I was working this other job, so I wasn't around a lot. I felt really bad for Nals because he was like attached to my hip and now I'm gone 8 hours a day. I was like, we'll get him a dog. So I found someone up near Atlanta who had puppies, golden retriever puppies. And I said, hey, look, we have a law firm. We bring them to the office. We're going to bring them to the office. And I can't have a barker, right? Or any of these barking dogs. She goes, well, I have 2 puppies left. And one of them just started barking like crazy. And the other one doesn't make a sound. I said, perfect. Give me that. Give me that one. So I fly up there, get a rental car, drive about 2 hours, pick up the dog, and drove it down to Florida. About 2 hours into the drive, the dog wakes up and starts barking.
Oh no!
And he hasn't stopped barking since.
No.
And I said, this woman gave me the wrong one, and so
or false advertising, but that is horrible.
Oh my gosh!
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So I mean, once you have them, you have them.
It's like
it is what it is. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. No, Luna's good about it, and Riley barks, but not quite as much. But Riley, I think she had a rougher upbringing, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, sure.
So we have to kind of work within her limitations. But when I worked at Criteria in West Hollywood, that was a dog-friendly office, so we had lots of dogs around all day, and that's how I didn't have any pets at that time. I hadn't since I was a kid. That's how I realized I was allergic.
Oh.
I thought I'd have to quit. I was not going to admit that I was allergic because I was afraid they'd send all the dogs home and my coworkers would never.
They would kill you.
Right. But someone told me I could take a Zyrtec every day, and that's exactly what I did.
Did that fix it?
It did fix it for the most part. If I miss a Zyrtec even by 4 hours, I'll start to break out into hives.
No shit.
So it's that bad. But the one Zyrtec a day, I can be around. I have a cat, 2 dogs, and a tortoise. The tortoise I'm not allergic to. But the cat.
I hope not.
Yes, if he hibernates. His name's Senator Bronson. Yes, he's very dignified. He's like 30 years old or something like that.
Oh my God.
He's a desert tortoise. He'll outlive us. So hopefully we have to leave her property with a backyard so that she can keep this tortoise.
Oh my goodness. So the tortoise just hang out in the backyard?
Just in the back, although he's inside right now because he hibernates, and he woke up early this year, unfortunately. But we can't let him out yet. We're about to have a big storm, believe it or not, in Southern California. We get rain sometimes, and we're about to have a big storm come through. So we're not going to let him out. He can't be outside when it dips, below 40 degrees or so. But generally, he just lives in the backyard and eats grass. Lowest maintenance pet you can imagine.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Inside in a box.
How long have you had him?
My husband got him the year we started dating, so in 2016. And then, so we've had him since then, and I think he was about 22 or so. They don't know exactly how old, but they said a sheriff found him walking around on the side of the road. We epoxied his registration tag to his shell after he got lost once. so that people will know he's a tame tortoise and give us a call. You can't buy desert tortoises. They're endangered in California. So you have to adopt them from a rescue. And technically we have a tortoise permit and we can't breed him. And we're required, I think, to give him back if we can't keep him. I don't really understand the rules, but I do know we have a permit to have the tortoise.
How interesting. How big is he?
He's, if you can't see, if you're listening, just know I'm holding up something about the size of 1.5 large loaves of round sourdough bread. I don't know why that's the comparison I just came up with, but that's what it is. Yeah. So he's not that big, but he's
like 10 pounds or something.
Maybe. You know what? I should really weigh him, but I think that's about right. And he just eats grass. Some people feed their tortoises kale and berries and all kinds of things, but our understanding is he's meant to just eat what's outside. So when kids come over, we give them romaine lettuce, and that's his candy. He loves to crunch on romaine lettuce. Yeah. And it doesn't have a lot of nutrients. So I guess the thought is you don't give it to them every day because it'll fill their stomachs with, I wish I had this problem, with watery lettuce. He's fantastic. I should get him on the website. Actually, he'd be a great fit for 7 Seedlings.
Yeah.
The tortoise, the website tortoise. Luna's on the website. Riley isn't. I could do better about being more equal access for my pets.
Oh, that's funny. The dogs are fine. Are fine with them.
Oh yeah. They're well, Riley went through a phase where she would flip him over. That was horrible.
Oh my God, no.
Yep. We'd find him on his back, but she was heavily reprimanded and she stopped. Luna just kind of looks at him he doesn't do much. He's a moving rock.
Yeah.
So for the most part, they don't really care about him. The cat, Riley coming home with us was probably the worst day of the cat's life, but they've come to a peaceful accord. Actually, my husband, his office has a plaque for the cat. It says her name's 11. It says 11 secretary tuple legal because she sleeps on his desk all day. Worst secretary ever. Once I brought him a sandwich in there, and when he walked away to wash his hands, she ate it. She tried to eat it and he couldn't eat it anymore. Or actually it was some pasta. So she sleeps all day, does nothing but meow to come in and out, doesn't answer the calls.
If she sleeps all day, is she up all night?
I guess, but I don't really know what she does all night.
Not bothering you.
It just doesn't really bother us unless we leave the bedroom door closed. Then she meows to come in. But if we have these door buddy latches that make sure they stay cracked so that the cat can come in and out, but the dogs can't because we keep the dogs with us at night. She has I could best describe it as an igloo. She has a felt dome on top of my husband's desk. Yeah, and that's where she sleeps all day. She crosses the Zoom camera on his calls with his clients all the time. She prefers his office because the dogs don't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's her domain.
So he brings her into the office?
Nope. She just decided that was where she hangs out.
Oh, so that's just.
I see what you're saying. No, he has a home office.
Oh, okay.
No, if she was a traveling cat, that would be fantastic. No. He's so we moved out of the city, out of, Los Angeles proper to a suburb in Ventura County, about an hour north, not very far north. And one of the reasons was during COVID, we realized maybe it would be nice to have a little more space and a little more access to nature and live closer to some of my family. So it's been pretty good. He had a co-working space, or he had an office basically before we moved out here, and he would have one again, but I begged him to not, because then I'd be working alone all day. And I'm absolutely an extrovert and prefer to have someone to talk to.
Yeah. So it's you two at the house, anyone else?
My business partner, Eric, actually lives in LA proper. So he comes and stays here a few nights a week. We've been best friends for a long time, all three of us. He was my assistant on the cookie convention. Actually, that's how I met him. And then he's the one I referred to work at that law office afterward. So he's here a few nights a week. And then obviously my 11-year-old is around, and we have a pretty open door policy. So her friends are here all the time. There's a sleepover almost every week.
That's great.
Riley whining outside the door now. We have a couple of mother's helpers. That's our version of a personal assistant who are in high school, who come and help out. They're around a couple of days a week. It's a surprisingly busy house for being a couple with a child. Yeah. You
got a little farm there. You got offices. You got people coming and going, sleepovers. It's busy.
We do have the farm. That's why the 7 Seedlings, that's why the agency is called what it is, because my husband is really big into permaculture. He's studying horticulture at UCLA right now, actually, for their extension program. And so we have, fruit trees and potting beds and all the plant. All the things you could imagine. We grow potatoes, things like that. I wouldn't say we're the most successful food growers yet, but there's certainly a lot going on back there. We have a pretty big yard. And so when he's not lawyering, if you will, he woodworks and does the permaculture.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah. So you guys have a big lot.
I think so. I think it's about a 1/4 acre.
That's big.
A lot of it is a sloped hill though. So, but he built a retaining wall. I saw him doing all kinds of math in his notebook. He did it himself to hold that hill back. And that's where we plant. We have raspberry bushes, which is not a great plant for California, if I'm being honest. It usually gets too hot, but we have or cold, which is it? We have raspberry bushes. We have herbs. We have catnip. That's a fun one. Yeah, but and that's why the lifestyle we have works for us, because we have, things going on outside of the office. It would be nice to have an office, but I don't think every time we've done it, the value just for us personally hasn't been there.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are you? What town are you in?
I'm in Thousand Oaks.
Okay.
The most prominent industry around here is biotech, actually. So but it's Britney Spears lives here.
Oh.
Never see her. It's right by Westlake Village. So it's we could pop over the hill and be in Malibu in 25 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How close were the fires?
Not super close. So we were worried that, and there were a couple that sprouted up near us besides the two big ones. The Palisades fire was definitely closer to us. And I know some attorneys who were evacuated out of the Topanga Mountains nearby, for example, with that fire, but not close enough that we were threatened or ever under evacuation warning. Definitely close enough that we did 4 hours each, so 12 hours total of fire escaping the morning of the Palisades fire to just remove as much dry leaves, debris. We soaked the yards, just everything we could to get ready. We had to run the generators. The power went out. That's always fun for client calls. It's close enough. I know many people who lost their homes in either fire. They'll be okay, but that's obviously devastating. We're a lot closer to where the Woolsey fire was in 2020, right before COVID, I think it was, or during COVID, that burned down, a lot of the Malibu mountains. Kind of the headline here is Malibu burns pretty often.
Yeah.
Wonderful place, but a lot of the areas that burned have burned before.
Yeah, we were living up in Santa Cruz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had a couple fires then, but nothing that really threatened us. There were some in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but nothing like what you guys have had.
You have hurricanes, we have fires, and sometimes an earthquake.
Yeah, we evacuated for the first time for the hurricane this year.
This year? Mm-hmm. Where'd you go?
Went to Orlando.
Okay.
We just went to a big hotel in Orlando. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was wild. It was wild. It was a Waldorf hotel. It was connected to another hotel. So it was like basically two hotels and just hundreds of dogs. Just because everyone, they put out an order.
Friendly hotel.
Well, the governor put out an order saying that all hotels had to accept animals.
That makes sense. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was just wild.
I have friends who live in Orlando, and they would post regular updates saying, "No, we are not threatened." But Florida's a big place. We're okay. Mm-hmm. The nicest hotels in Beverly Hills here were all completely packed. They might still be because people evacuating out of the Pacific Palisades. When I had the cookie convention, Sarah Michelle Gellar of Buffy fame was appearing at the convention because she had a food brand at that time. We sent a limo or a car to pick her up in the Palisades. So that really is where everybody lived, all the stars live. And so they were all in the Beverly Hills Hotel. And I had just been having tea at one of the Peninsula or one of the fancy hotels down there. And all of them were just slammed. So that's exactly what I would do, granted, if we had to evacuate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we weren't. Yeah, people here generally don't get too concerned about the hurricanes.
Right.
Yeah, it's like the people who live out of state that come down here, and then you see them board up their windows. But
Yes.
everyone else just, it's like, okay, and they're usually never what they're made out to be. But
Right.
this
And I
one,
get it. They have to warn you about
mhm,
the worst case scenario, but right.
yeah, but this one
My
was
friend
like
posted a video of
enormous.
a lawn chair knocked over in her yard and said damage. Oh no.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. Here, it's different because the smoke, even if you're not under threat of a
Oh,
fire, the smoke travels quite a bit. And the conditions that lend itself to a fire watch mean that they could sprout up anywhere at any time. So you really are kind of on edge, waiting to see if one comes up near you. A nonprofit runs an app called Watch Duty. And that was what everybody was using to see where the fires were. So obviously, my husband having a nonprofit law firm, that was fascinating to me because people were not checking local government accounts. They were not listening to the radio or whatever people used to do. They were all using alerts from this one nonprofit app to see where fires were, the stage the fires were in. You could see live camera footage from cameras set up all over the mountains and see
that's great.
where the fires were. So hopefully you don't need anything equivalent in Florida, but
Yeah,
if you ever
yeah.
did, hopefully a good nonprofit with a bunch of retired firefighters pops up and makes it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we'll never burn here. I mean, it rains almost every day. Well,
Right. Here's the opposite problem.
Yeah, yeah.
My daughter said, "Why did we choose to live somewhere with fires?" And I said, "It's always something. There's no, it's
Yeah.
I'm sure there are. I think I've heard, does it Wyoming or somewhere is relatively natural disaster free, but it's always going to be something."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this last hurricane that we went to Orlando, there wasn't much damage to the houses except from the wind, but the flooding was ridiculous.
Oh,
Yeah, there was like it was like it hit at high tide, and the surge, right? I guess the hurricane pushes it down. I guess it surges. And the surge was like something like 13 feet or something like that.
Sounds like a disaster movie.
Oh my God. We a bunch of friends' houses flooded. And my father's house, he lives about an hour. He has his winter home down about an hour from us. His place got like a foot and a half in it. Okay, a foot and a half of water in it. Other people we know got 4, 5, 6 feet in their places. But even a foot and a half of water is a complete disaster.
Right.
Complete disaster.
That's it, right? You have to redo.
Your furniture's ruined.
Yep.
Right. The walls are all ruined. Floors are ruined. Right. Gets moldy. Yeah. My father, a foot and a half at most, a foot and a half. And the house I went down and helped him out to remove the stuff. And it was just disgusting. It smelled like sewage. And it's like,
horrible.
Oh my God. Felt so bad. And a lot of these people, the contractors get all busy. And so, because there's so many houses that need to be fixed. They still haven't, his place still isn't fixed yet. Yeah.
And then you get the attorney ads.
Yeah. Right.
House flooded, we can help. Over here, it's the fire ads. It's, it's exactly what you would imagine. Wildfire victims contact us, and then there's the lawsuits against which power, I can never keep track of which power company causes the fire, but
right.
The lawsuits.
What do you guys do about insurance?
We're okay. Despite being in a generally high fire area, our specific neighborhood is not considered high risk. I'm sure maybe one day it will be, but we can see the high risk maps and we're not personally on them. So we have a pretty normal, we use AAA because of course, being married to an attorney, he checks I think it's the Attorney General, the Insurance Commissioner's website to see which companies get the most complaints or pay out / don't pay out the most often on claims. And AAA is consistently one of the best in terms of their treatment of their policyholders. So, our home insurance situation is very normal, but down the line, I think there is a future in which we're just kind of stuck on, we have the California Fair plan here, and that's sort of the insurer of last resort.
Mm. Yeah. Ashley's car, she got a brand new car at the beginning of the year, and then was pulling out. She parked in a carport next to our office, and she backed out. And there's like 4 poles in a carport, and they're pretty thin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the roof of it had blown off during the hurricane. They still haven't replaced it, so it's just like poles there now.
Yeah.
So she's backing up, and she turns out of it, and she forgot that there was that pole there.
Oh,
and
no.
It grabbed the front of her Tesla and just pretty much ripped the whole front end off of it. Oh my God. It looked like she had been in a big accident.
Terrible accident.
Yeah. And so we took it to a Tesla certified place. It's local. And the guy's like, it's going to be 15 grand. And so he sends me,
or however much of the Tesla, right?
Yeah. So he sends me line items of every single thing that needs to be done. It's like a 15-page report.
Wow.
So I filed a claim I was initially thinking it was going to be a couple grand. I was going to just pay for it rather than filing a claim. Mm-hmm. It comes back 15 grand. I'm like, okay, I'm filing a claim.
Right.
Allstate then is like, the guy, the adjuster was like, this is like a $5,000-$6,000 repair. We're not going to pay 15. And it went back and forth for a while. And the mechanic was like, hey, this guy's local. He works very close to the shop. Have him come down and we'll go over line by line on what we're proposing. And if he thinks that things shouldn't be there, right, then he can debate it with me. But the mechanic's like, look, I'm doing everything what the manufacturer recommends I do.
Right.
I bring it up to the Allstate guy. He's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Of course not.
I was like, yeah, how do you know it's only going to be $5,000-$6,000 then? Right. And so we're in a battle. We just picked the car up last night. I had to pay the 15 grand.
Oh.
And now we're in a basically we hire an appraiser and Allstate hires an appraiser.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at everything that was, on the report, and they come up with a number. So we'll
Good luck.
see. I
Good
know.
luck. Did you get an attorney?
I happen to know one.
You happen to have one in the family?
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Insurance companies are just great when it comes to that kind of thing. It took me once, I think 8 months to get a $1,600 refund from Blue Shield that every time I called, conceded they owed me, and they'd say, is the check not in the mail? Are you sure you didn't get it? And I'm thinking, yes, I'm sure. And just, on principles, I think I totaled it at the end. It took 14 hours of effort to get the money back. God. That everybody, and frankly, a letter on attorney letterhead.
That happened to me with luggage. I remember flying back. My family's up in New Jersey. I flew there over Christmas, dead of winter, and my suitcase full of all my winter clothes, and the suitcase doesn't show up. So I'm there for like 2 weeks, and they keep saying, "Oh yeah, it'll probably arrive tomorrow, and then we'll bring your luggage." Blah blah. Never showed up. It was such a pain in the ass because every day I'm like going out and buying underwear, and it's like I didn't want to buy a whole wardrobe full of clothes because it was going to show up any day, but it never did.
It never showed up.
Never showed up, and I know. Those are all like the clothes that I wear all the time, and at the time, I wasn't making any money. I was fucking poor.
So it was devastating.
No, it was terrible. It was the worst. Yeah. All my shoes. It was like, I basically brought everything with me.
Right.
And they made that process to get reimbursed so difficult. I had to list out every single item, when I bought it, what the brand was. If I had receipts, I had to get everything notarized. It was like, and they kept kicking it back as rejected. And it took about a year before I think it was about $2 grand that they ended up saving.
A year
later. Oh, it was awful.
I don't know why they get to get away with this, but
I know, right?
But they do.
They do.
Almost like you're acting in bad faith.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Anytime I have to deal with it, I feel like dealing with insurance is a part-time job. Anytime I have to do it, it's terrible. So,
Yeah.
well, I don't think it's going to get better either. I think this is just the situation we're in as consumers.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
good lists of all your things.
Right.
At least
Right.
with buying everything online now, there's good receipts.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, look on the bright side, right?
Yep.
Everything, looking around my office and literally everything here that wasn't a gift is something I bought online or bought in a store, and they emailed me a receipt due to being a member of some rewards program. So it wouldn't
Pretty
be
much
too
the
bad.
same. Pretty much the same. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All these books and everything. Yeah. Well, Nancy, it was great talking to you and meeting you.
It was great meeting you too. It was lovely. I look forward to
Yeah.
seeing your sales script.
Oh yeah. Yes. I will send that to you. Absolutely. I'm still we met on it yesterday. We have our weekly meeting. And we're going through it. It's long. I think it's maybe like 10 pages or something like that. But I think it's a lot shorter than how it looks. Right?
Sure.
My wife is looking at it, and of course it's not going to be said. A lot of it's like verbatim, but of course the people are going to make it their own and all that. But yeah, she needs to read the second half and approve it. She got halfway through. She's like, I can't do this now.
Excellent. Well, you never really know until you try it with a few people anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Well, you have a great rest of your day, and talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.